Alright, can everybody hear me?
You're everywhere here.
You hear my wife talking in the background, that's because she's on a phone call as well. We'll give everybody an opportunity to start signing on. Let's do this. If you can hear me and everything's good, and you're able to see the stream, let's go ahead and start signing up in this chat room or in the live chat. Go ahead and start maybe putting in your name and a specific question you would like to see discussed, and I'll just kind of address first come, first serve. My goal tonight is just to kind of ease some anxiety you may have about the test, and try to explain some holes that you may have in your Gods of War assignment to help you not just answer the question, but to get high marks and get that A that you so want. So let's give it a couple more minutes. Let some people sign in, and go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat portion of the app, and we'll go from there. I'm going to awkwardly stare at the screen for a little while. What I'm doing right now is I'm bringing up the summary guide as well. The first question was broad. Let's kind of highlight some things with the Eastern and Western theater. So I'm bringing that document up right now. Alright. Kind of freaking out a little bit because I can't exactly. Can everyone see me? I'm trying to get to the point where I can see everything and I can read everything. Okay. Alright. Eastern and Western theater. Thank you. Alright, Ellie. Eastern and Western theater. I think you need to focus on the majority of killings that took place, or however many war casualties there were. if you focus on the killing zone that's mentioned in your Civil War summary, then you're going to obviously be talking about the Eastern Theater. Technically, the Eastern Theater is going to just, take up about, 2 to 3 states right there, dealing with technically Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland. And then obviously your Western Theater is going to be your entire, most of your southern states there. And basically when you're looking at the southern states and you're looking at the western part of the theater, it was so much land and so much area. And I don't know about you guys, but this has been one of the more difficult things for me to teach because the Civil War has so much information. Obviously, you guys are very smart. You can, kind of sense it in some of the lectures that I had and all that. It's just so much information, and sometimes that can be overwhelming. And I don't necessarily want this to be a test that diminishes, obviously, the importance of the Civil War, and I don't want it to make it to the level of the 5th grade cahoots that we were doing in class. But I do feel like we've given you a good basis to at least start going into explanations and start leading up to post-Civil War civil rights and why all these stories are kind of connected into United States history. So the Western Theater is going to be so large. It's where ultimately the South is going to lose the war. As Gettysburg is going on in Pennsylvania, Vicksburg is going on in Mississippi, as both Union forces technically have success in both of those campaigns. It's going to be ultimately the turning point that leads to the Union Army finishing off the war and ultimately the Confederates surrendering at Appomattox. So what confuses, let's look at some more questions, and I'm trying not to, I've got the test open right now and I'm looking at it, and remember there's only 5 questions on it. Let me ask you this: can you give me 2 major armies that fought in the Eastern Theater? The theaters, Ellie, while you're thinking about that answer or whatever, when we're talking, they're going to be different time periods too. I mean, the Eastern Theater, Western Theater is going to encompass all of the Civil War. So obviously, like a lot of, when you talk about Chancellorsville and 7 Days and Gettysburg and all these other areas that you're gonna whether you're talking about in Virginia, Pennsylvania, or Maryland, you're talking in the eastern part of the theater, the eastern portion of the Civil War. And then obviously when you start talking about the Western Theater, pretty much any southern battle, whether you're talking about Vicksburg, Chattanooga, Shiloh, anything like that, that's just going to be in your southern states. So I hope that answers the question, because when you talk about time periods, it's technically 61 to 65. Alex, you answered the question. Okay, the main army that's going to be, the main armies that are going to be fighting in the Eastern Theater are going to be, Northern Virginia and the Potomac. So make sure you can identify. I think it helps if you can identify who the main general individual is that's leading the Northern Virginia Army and who's leading the Potomac. Okay, so it's not one or the other, but both. What are you asking, Ellie? Yes. Southern States Western Theater, yes. Yeah. So you're going to have different, like, McClellan started out in the army of the, and this has been difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around, guys, and it's just uh, obviously putting it in place. You had different people like um, um, McClellan, Hooker, Grant. Grant wasn't necessarily um, in charge of the Army of the Potomac until after um, Chattanooga, the Battle of Chattanooga. Grant's fighting in the South, and then pretty much Lincoln says, you know what, we need to get you up into the North and help in what's going there. So um, there's going to be different things. If you can remember that Grant is going to be affiliated with the Union, if you can remember that Sherman's going to be affiliated with the Union, if you can remember that Lee and Stonewall Jackson are going to be affiliated with the Confederates, I think that's a good starting point. Actually, I think it's a main starting point for you to be able to do well in this test, because that's who we are focusing on in this assessment. I've got an individual I don't know here. It says a new user or whatever, but they're making some pretty decent points. Okay, Emma's question. Leaders get confusing. I'm looking at the test right now. I know I've already said that once, but I'll say it again. Lee, Jackson, Grant, and Sherman for sure have their own identification part. There are some true-false questions. There's a true-false question that deals with McClellan. Actually, two true-false questions that deals with McClellan. And then I would make sure I understand I'd make sure I understood Jeff Davis. Okay, make sure you understand who Jefferson Davis is. I will tell you this, that the true-false portion of the test comes directly from the Civil War summary, and nothing else. All right, I see. And guys, this is a little bit more organized, obviously, with instead of Periscope, because you can see the questions. Don't be afraid to jump in and answer some of the questions that I may overlook, because some of them are getting, like, obviously I'm seeing a lot of questions up here, and I'm trying to answer them in the way that they were, asked. Somebody asked about Sidney Johnston. No need to worry about it. And when I say no need to worry about it, don't think that like I'm just shrugging it off. The more information you can add into a essay that centers around your Gods of War assignment benefits you. So don't sit there and don't let me discourage you from putting in more information because I say don't worry about it. That's not what I'm trying to do. Um, let's see. Somebody asked a question about tell me about Hooker. Uh, it's all going to be based in Chancellorsville. So when you're looking at what type of leader he was in Chancellorsville, um, describe his characteristics and then how maybe Robert E. Lee and Jackson maybe used his characteristics against him, maybe to their advantage, or what were they able to do that was so risky to fight against Hooker. It just seems like when you get very elementary when looking at Hooker, he talked a big game in Chancellorsville, but when it came down to it, it seemed like Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson were obviously more aggressive in their military strategy than Hooker. Like I said, and I told y'all in plenty of the conversations we had, my I struggle with not being feeling comfortable or being an expert in all these military strategies and how Civil War armies worked. But to be honest with you, I think they're fascinating. I would like to study them more. But when you start getting on, techniques and all that, that's just stuff that I know very, very. It's limited.
Yeah, that's what they probably saying. All right. Y'all have a good night. Okay, bye.
All right. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about um, if you go back and you look at your Civil War summary. Um, let's see. Yeah, you can go back and read about Davis as far as him not wanting to succeed Jack. You know, I don't really know if that's going to be any benefit to you in one of the essays or anything like that. You can add it. You can talk about it. I will tell you that there is one true/false question that deals with Jefferson Davis. Um, and basically, I would focus on like what kind of job. How would you rate Jefferson Davis's um, effectiveness as far as uh, uniting the Southern states against the Union? And I'll let y'all talk about that one. All right. Obviously, I'm starting to get overwhelmed with all these questions here. So, McClellan was in Antietam. Yes, that is correct. Which side would he have been? What major battle should we know? think for you to be able to be successful in the test, everything that's in the Gods of War, Shiloh, Vicksburg, Chattanooga, the 7 Days Battle, the Peninsular Campaign, and then Sherman's March to the Sea. Where did it start? Where did it end? And then Antietam and Gettysburg. With Gettysburg focusing just on Pickett's charge. Yes. I think if you talk Antietam, you've got to mention Order 191. I think that's obviously how McClellan got confidence against Lee, knowing that he was never confident against Robert E. Lee. Jack makes a good point on Robert E. Lee and Jackson's relationship at 7 Days. Obviously there was a time there during that campaign where a lot of historians have their own opinion. Some say Jackson was maybe drunk as part of his bipolar situation going on, or that he was just not organized. But there was Lee felt like he could have wiped out the Union Army there in the 7 days, but it wasn't. It wasn't so. I didn't tell this to third period. I think I told it to seventh period. Third period's essays, for the most part, in your original Gods of War assignment that I got a chance to look at today, were pretty spot on. I know a lot of you guys collaborated, and obviously, I could tell that in looking at them. But the information was good, so I only hope that if you're looking at that information and studying that information, I feel like you're prepared. Nick makes a good point about the Confederates being outnumbered, but because of Lee and Jackson, we haven't talked about Jackson's techniques, his new techniques with his foot army, and how aggressive he was, and moving in the Shenandoah Valley. Let's see. Sarah, I like from just my studying of McClellan, I think there would have to be a lot of criticisms of how he led. And if I were to personally dive more into his style, I think my goal in the research would be prove why I felt like he wasn't an effective leader. And I think there's plenty of evidence, that we can be discussed or that can be found, kind of in our conversations. I can't remember specifically in the Civil War summary, but there were some good things McClellan did well too. I think there were some things that we added in the Antietam PowerPoint that discussed why he was placed in leadership and what he was able to do. Let's see. Aiden makes another good point about the Shenandoah campaign. Okay, let's. All right, so Kate asked a question, and I hope I'm not too far behind. But Kate asked the question of um, hold on, I'm lost now. I can't find the question. Where is the question about Antietam? Okay, okay. Why did Antietam cause Great Britain and France to drop out? Remember, you know, if you go back and you look at the Antietam PowerPoint, you can discuss kind of what the South had to offer, these other countries. But if you just get down to it, because of technically the Union's success in Maryland or in Antietam, um, Lincoln then had the feeling or he went ahead and started to move the talk of the Civil War from being a war to preserve the Union to a war specifically dealing with slavery. And knowing that the Union had some strongholds and they were starting to gain momentum, uh, he was able to make a political move, in my opinion, a political move uh, to uh, to get the influence of other foreign countries out of the Civil War, um, because once the Emancipation Proclamation, came to be, and this is a war to end slavery, then that immediately makes the Southern states fighting for the right of slavery, and that's just something that Great Britain and France can't support. And so know that in the early runs of it, the Emancipation Proclamation obviously had some irony into it that it just freed um, uh, slaves in the border states, and it didn't necessarily, technically, from the wording, didn't free slaves in the northern states, even though there were slaves there. So Lincoln knew the irony in it, but continued to press on and eliminated that foreign influence from entering the Civil War. All right, essay questions. Can you discuss the battles of Shiloh, Vicksburg, and Chattanooga as a way to describe what made Ulysses S. Grant such a talented commander? Can you talk about, him being a down to earth guy, um, his ability to rally the troops, the ability to, like when we talk about Shiloh, there was an example that stuck out with me that, even though there had been successes with Confederate forces in Shiloh, while some of the Southern Confederate generals were staying in nice places, or I think it was like a area like a Union, a captured Union uh, house or something that Confederate generals stayed there and took it easy. But Grant actually spent the night on the battlefield with his men, and to me, that kind of was, an example of what type of leader or commander that Grant was, because he was willing to, um, he was willing, he was willing to take that spot as his men, not to play, hey, I'm above you or anything like that. I'm placing myself in your shoes. I'm in this with you. Let's win this together, or let's fight this together. And then when you get into Vicksburg, you can talk about his risky move of running down the Mississippi at midnight, knowing that Vicksburg was one of the most fortified, if not the most fortified, southern city or Confederate strongholds in Mississippi and in the South. And yet he was able to send his ships down the Mississippi without suffering too much damage, and he was able to get his men into a position that was able to attack Vicksburg from the south, and which we learned in the video and discussion was its most vulnerable position. And then being able, Vicksburg was like a 40-day campaign, and it was ultimately one that Grant was able to shut off lines going into Vicksburg and basically just starve the people, out of Vicksburg, or cut off any supplies going into Vicksburg. And ultimately Pemberton, I believe, is the Confederate general there in Vicksburg, finally, gave Vicksburg away to the Union. And we didn't really talk a lot about Chattanooga, but I want you to do one thing. I think something that would help you in your essay is if you just simply look up on the internet the Cracker line and how that relates to the Battle of Chattanooga, and see if you can use that as a way to enhance your essay about Ulysses S. Grant. If there's going to be 5 essays on the test, you choose 4. Excuse me. Can I get underneath this? I gotta get underneath. Emma, I will agree. I will concede to you that I do feel like Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson are going to have very similar styles. I think that's why they worked so well, or why they had so much success in the Eastern Theater. I mean, it makes really and truly, when you look at this and you start looking at the pure numbers of it and how outnumbered they were, and that they were still able to have success, and kind of the moves that they made, splitting the army, and there wasn't a lot of intel that was going on at this time, so they could make it look like certain things were going on, and McClellan or whoever might feel like, hey, this is a typical strategy of somebody that's retreating, or whatever. There was, I mean, if you go back and look at Jackson's mantra, there was kind of a quote of how he planned to, or like the purpose behind his leadership or his military strategies. Like he wanted to do something with his strategies. What was that? Can somebody answer that real quick for me? Okay. The question was, and I can't even remember the question I asked. If you're talking about Jackson, and his leadership tactics, or what his goal was, or what his plans were, uh, to attack the enemy, or what was he wanting to do to the enemy, or what was his MO in trying to attack the other side. I guess the best way is just to answer this question because I'm having trouble finding along. But like the whole deal of mystifying and catching people off guard and misleading, surprise attacking the enemy if possible seem to be kind of a main characteristics of who Stonewall Jackson was. Sometimes you guys just y'all worry so much. There is no reason to move the test. This test has already been moved from last Thursday. You guys are fine. You guys are studying. The worst thing you can do is be anxious about this. That's only causing you to just quit doing it. 5 questions dealing with the Eastern Theater. Know where the killing zone is. Where did Lee have most of his success? I mean, technically, I think that's 2 test questions right there. Yeah. And here's the worst thing too, if you fail the test, you're not going to be defined by one test that you took in my class. You're all great people. Alright. If you really wanted to get into talking about Lee or Jackson, bring in some history from the summary that I gave you talking about Lee's background. Talk about, the problems at Chancellorsville, the success they had, but ultimately, Lee's success ultimately, can be tied back, to his failures, and what happened to Jackson at Chancellorsville. Killing zone, would you say Eastern Theater or Western Theater? Emma, that's correct. Eastern Theater would be correct. Jack. We haven't talked. Has anybody asked a question about Sherman? We really, I don't. I'm sure someone's asked a question maybe about the March to the Sea. Maybe that's just something y'all are comfortable with. Is there any specific questions that you... Okay, Caroline, let's talk about Sherman. How would you okay, the pioneer of American psychological warfare. Let's not think about this, Caroline. If you were asleep tonight and you woke up and all you heard was, just artillery and gunfire, and you were afraid for your life because the fighting, the complete destruction was in your backyard. How would you react to this? I mean, there's a lot of people obviously that haven't supported this war, but Sherman, and I regret, I'm sorry for using this term, but because it's associated with gambling, but he went all in. Okay, he went into a total war state. Okay, where even in I can't remember if it was a video that we watched or something that I watched. Sherman couldn't necessarily control everyone's actions, and so when you go into this massive total war, idea, um, the Union individuals, the Union Army was, still pissed off from what South Carolina did with starting and succeeding from the Union, and so these individuals kind of took it upon themselves to, uh, do what they wanted to. I mean, there's multiple stories of rapes and killings of children and everything that just demoralized the South. I mean, for me as a kid, like one of the more like famous movie scenes there is um, Gone with the Wind. Where everything is just completely destroyed after Sherman's march. Um, let's see. And I think you might be able to add more. I would read up. Yeah, Sherman was. I think in what I found in my research or what I saw is that he's labeled as being that just brute guy that just destroyed everything. But he was upset when he read of stories or heard of situations where people were going kind of above the because there's an honor and a code when it comes to war, and some of these individuals that were part of the Union Army were not following that code. No, I wasn't alive when Gone with the Wind was released, but I just, as a young man, Nick, I did remember watching that film. It came in two VHS tapes at that time in my life. Um, so yeah, don't call me out. This live stream is going to last as long as I can feel confident that you guys feel confident about the test tomorrow. Hey, that's a good point to highlight as far as talking about Stonewall Jackson and his relationship with um, Robert E. Lee. If you can effectively look at Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson and their struggles or their tactics in and around 7 days, the 7 days battle. I think somebody asked, "What is the Peninsular Campaign?" That's the 7 days battle. That's the wilderness, and I didn't go into great detail with that. But that's the Peninsular Campaign is the same. The 7 days battle is a part of that campaign, and then talking about Chancellorsville and the Confederates being outnumbered. If you can talk about Jackson's willingness to, um, like Lee did a great job too, knowing the area, knowing the geography, topography of the area, which is so vital in this type of warfare. Jackson did have an amazing work ethic. Vicksburg happened at the same time Gettysburg is going on. I had a list and I left it at school of the battles that are going on there. Let's see, Shiloh. Let's see, Shiloh was 62. Hold on. Battle. Shiloh's 1862. Gettysburg and Vicksburg are going to be around. Let's see. They happened so close to each other. See, Battle of Vicksburg was May 18th to July 4th, 1863, and then Gettysburg was July 1 to July 3rd, 1863. Chancellorsville is going to be 1863 as well. April 3rd to May 6th, 1863 is going to be Chancellorsville. So, Chancellorsville, Vicksburg, Gettysburg, all leading up. Chancellorsville, Vicksburg, Gettysburg. And then obviously the March to the Sea. November 15th to December 21, 1864. If you, Sarah, if you go down and you look at Jack's answer, I mean, that's a good list. Emma, don't. Okay. Here's the deal. Do not try to force yourself to answer an essay question where all these come together. Specifically look at Grant in the battles that he was in. Like, look at Vicksburg, look at Chattanooga, look at, what's the one I'm leaving off? Shiloh. Okay, look at those three battles. What did Grant do to have success there? What did he do to highlight his characteristics as a leader? And then when you look at Chancellorsville and the 7 Days campaign, focus on Confederacy, the Confederates' leadership and how they were able to have success in those areas. What made Lee, like the whole title of this, Gods of War, like these individuals in these battles did things that put them above all of, I mean, there's a reason why we're not talking about McClellan as much. There's a reason why we're not talking about McDowell and Meade as much, is because the individuals that presented themselves in this assignment are the major figures that did things that were unheard of, that were gutsy, that were heroic, that were worthy of study. So, like Sherman's March to the Sea, Chancellorsville, 7 Days, Lee, and Jackson, Antietam. Talking about McClellan and Lee there. How did that lead to, obviously we talk about Antietam because, first of all, Antietam's bloodiest battle, one-day battle of the war. So many individuals passed away, but, what could this war really have been if foreign influence would have entered, entered during this? Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Union. I mean, with what we talked at Gettysburg, I just, I think too, like we get to the point where we see ultimately Lee's aggressiveness. I mean, just look at the remorse that he showed after Pickett's charge. I mean, like, Lee's this great individual, this great leader, people willing to die from him, die for him. And then, at the end, when Pickett's charge goes so desperately, it was a disaster. Okay, Donald Trump. Um, he shows remorse for it. He says that it's his fault. Um, right now, Max, you're asking how many questions on the regular test, like the portion before the. I think I had anywhere from 20 to 22. I'm still in the process of eliminating some of the ones that was there. Sarah, to be honest with you, neither can I. But I mean, as difficult as this has been maybe for me to refresh my memory and to go deeper into some research of the Civil War, I feel like y'all have challenged me to learn more about it, and I hope that I've been able to challenge you uh, to learn more about it. Ellie, you're gonna have plenty of time. I'm sure there's some questions that I didn't go over, and it's almost 10 o'clock, which is my bedtime. Put it to you this way. I refuse to allow you to stress on time. However, my job is to get you prepared for this test that you will take your senior year. And unfortunately, you know, the IB is not going to have such a heart when it comes to time frame. They're going to give you an hour and a half, and you're going to have to do well, and you're going to have to get it done in an hour and a half. So I've got to start putting some limits, or putting the pressure on you, all right, to be able to write your information down and to do this. Now I have a heart. Sometimes I have to, take that out of it when I'm grading. But at the end of the day, like, this is what we signed up for, and we're gonna be all right. Just study the information. Go back and look at this line. If you go back and you look at this, I've tried my best, like, not to just read some exact questions off the test. Like, I feel like that, if y'all started the conversation, asked some questions, I kind of discuss some answers that I'm looking for. Sarah, if you think this test and making this cry, you just wait till you become an adult. I believe you're ready. I'll give 2 extra bonus points to the individual that can identify what's in the cup. Nobody's got it right so far. No, actually, the answer was lemonade, and I think Caroline was the only one that got it right. That noise, Emma, was me opening up a bag of hamburger buns to shove in my drink. Alright guys, I'm gonna get off. I hope this was beneficial. Bonus questions have all to do with Gatesburg in that video. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Oh yeah, and you get 5 points for the Powder Puff game. I forgot about that. Did you like the YouTube more than the Periscope? Oh, you know what? Here's something you need to focus on. Every single one of y'all, let me stare into the computer screen right now so you understand how serious I am. You better darn well work on your handwriting too, and if Seth is not on this, you need to email, text, call Seth and tell that boy to practice his handwriting before he takes his test. You heard? How many of y'all are trying to look into the screen behind me, or how many of y'all have noticed my wife get up and down and walk around numerous times? This is my daughter's drawing and coloring of a red bat. That's a picture of a black cat and an orange pumpkin that my daughter colored. Notice how well she stays within the lines. She's obviously a very, very smart individual. Sarah, pick a number 1 through 22. Is Sarah still on? Pick a number 1 through 22, Sarah. Sarah, the number, let's see. Obviously, 18 is a number that I was thinking about omitting from the test. But Sarah, I promise tomorrow I will give you the correct answer to number 18. Only you, Sarah, nobody else. I'm just playing, I wouldn't do that. Alright, I'm about to get off. I hope you have a good night. I think our attention span's gone. We made it an hour. I'll take some questions on Remind if you have any last minute things, last minute questions, something that you're bothered by. Guys, you're prepared for this study. Take you some time, read, and you should be okay. All right. Good luck. Good night, and God